Let's get lifted. Let's get lifted. Let's get lifted. Let's get lifted. Let's get lifted with these ABCs. 1, 2, 3s. Take a look inside. Everything you need is right in front of you. Right in front of you on these ABCs. It's time for learning. So I have some more icons I'd like to share with you. Will you learn them with me? Thank you. We're going to start off with one of my favorite actresses and singers, Lena Horne, born June 30th, 1917, passed May 9th in 2010. Lena Horne is known and loved not only for her musical and dramatic talents, but also for her continual interest in and support of many humane causes. She started in show business with the chorus line at the Cotton Club in 1933. From there, she toured with Noble Sissle's orchestra, and she later joined Charlie Barnett's band, with which she made her first records. In the early 1940s, Horne went to Hollywood, where she became the first Black woman to sign a term contract in film. Her films include Panama Hattie, 1942, Cabin in the Sky, 1943, and Stormy Weather, 1943. Her most popular recordings include Stormy Weather, The Lady is a Tramp, and Mad About the Boy. In 1981, Horne opened a one-woman show on Broadway called Lena Horne, The Lady and Her Music, for which she received a Tony Award. Lena Horne. All right. Next is Frances E.W. Harper, born in 1825, passed in 1911. The most prominent African-American poet to appear after Phyllis Wheatley, Frances E.W. Harper was born of free blacks in Maryland, which was then a slave state, and raised by an aunt and uncle who ran a school. In her teens, her love of learning was nurtured by her employer, who owned a bookstore and encouraged her reading. As she grew up and watched slave laws become more repressive, Harper began to speak and write about the inhumanity of slavery. That was what her writing is about. Leaving Maryland in 1850, she taught at Union Seminary in Ohio and began a lecturing career in 1854 with the address Education and the Elevation of the Colored Race. From 1856 to 1860, she spoke for the Anti-Slavery Society in Maine, and after emancipation, she continued to tour and speak on behalf of equal rights for the newly freed slaves. A feminist, Harper founded the National Association of Colored Women. Her many poems and her novel, Lola Leroy, serve as emotionally charged snapshots of the South during Reconstruction. These are African American Women Knowledge Cards, Library of Congress, published by Pomegranate Publications. Frances E.W. Harper. All right. Lillian Evanti, born in 1890, passed in 1967, an opera singer. Lillian Evanti was one of the first African Americans to develop a professional career in grand opera. Between 1925 and 1928, she studied and performed in many of the principal opera houses in France and Italy. When she auditioned for the Metropolitan Opera in 1932, however, the company's exclusionary racial policy made it impossible for her to perform there. That same year, Evanti gave a recital at the Belasco Theater, the only prestigious stage in Washington, D.C., to present performances by African-American artists to segregated audiences. 2 years later, she gave a command performance at the White House. Evanti embarked on several concert tours in Africa, where she was decorated for her cultural contributions in Nigeria, Liberia, and Ghana. In 1957, she wrote Ghana's independence song. Lillian Evanti. Lillian Evanti. All right, I have another opera singer for you. Sissieretta Jones. 1869, she was born. She passed in 1933. Born Matilda Joyner in Portsmouth, Virginia, Sissieretta Jones enrolled in the Providence Academy of Music at age 14 and is reported to have completed her training at the New England Conservatory of Music in Boston. Her professional debut at Providence's San Souci Garden led to an international tour with the Tennessee Jubilee Singers. Audiences around the world applauded the first Negro prima donna and her rich soprano voice. According to writer James Weldon Johnson, she had most of the qualities essential in a great singer: a natural voice, a physical figure, grand air, and the engaging personality. During a concert stint in New York City, a critic dubbed Jones the Black Patti. Of course, that was comparing her to Italian soprano Adelina Patti. Though she disliked it, as I would have as well, the nickname became synonymous with Sissieretta Jones, a pioneer of Black operatic singing. Jones paved the way for a long list of Black opera singers to follow. So she was one of the ones that paved the way for our Lillian Evantis. All right. She was right during that time, but a little bit earlier. Yeah, a little bit earlier. Actually, a lot bit earlier. Well, a little bit earlier. 32 years or so earlier. All right. Last but not least, Septima Clark. Born in 1898, passed in 1987. In 1960, Septima Clark recruited African Americans to participate in the Southern Christian Leadership Conference Citizenship Education Program she headed in McIntosh, Georgia. There, busloads of folk were taught basic literacy to prepare them for voter registration, an idea Clark had pioneered at the Highlander Folk School in the 1950s. I just thought that you couldn't get people to register and vote until you could teach them and to read and write. You couldn't get people to just register and vote until you can teach them to read and write. Clark had already campaigned successfully to allow African Americans to teach in the city of Charleston and for equal pay for Black and white teachers. But in 1956, after 40 years in the South Carolina school system, she was fired for refusing to give up her NAACP membership. She was fired for refusing to give up her NAACP membership. Clark then commenced her second career through her efforts, which was 897 citizenship schools teaching literacy and voter education in people's kitchens and beauty parlors under the trees, which was organized from 1957 to 1970. So this is the kind of work that people were doing just to get us to vote. People's kitchens, people's beauty parlors, under the trees, wherever they could, teaching people to read and write. This is the work that it took to get us to where we are today. And we're not forgetting any of these people. We are sending flowers as much as we can to those that are living now and to those that came before us. So thank you for getting lifted with me. Let's get lifted. Let's get lifted. Let's get lifted on these ABC. 1, 2, 3. Take a look inside. Everything you need is right in front of you. Right in front of you on these ABCs. Thank you for learning with me. I'll see you next time.